For this project, we're going to be looking at our color schemes again. So we're looking at the color scheme of monochromatic. So breaking down that word, mono means one, chrome means color. So when you put monochromatic together, it means that you're creating artwork using only one color. Now, you don't have to be alarmed by that because within the color itself, there are many tints and shades. Tints are going to be that color with the addition of white. So, for example, in the background here, this violet has turned a very, very light violet. So we have the tint of that color. And you can also make shades of a color by adding black. So for this same shade of violet, up here in the front, they've added black to it to get a very dark shade, almost solid black version of that color. So with your watercolors, you're going to be creating a space um, project showing value as well, using just the one color. So the reason I'm saying that you're showing space is because you're going to have foreground, middle ground, and background in this drawing slash painting. You're going to be working on showing how as something gets further back, the lighter it's going to get. There's also some other indicators that things are far away. One is that they will start to look more blurry. So usually the stuff in the very back is a blurrier look. That's why it has that hazy, lighter color. It's also going to be higher up on the page. So, for example, down here at the bottom, these objects, these heels, whatever you have in your area that's closest to you, is at the very bottom of your page. And then the stuff that's further away is up here at the top. So let's look at our document camera. And we're going to do one together. So I'm going to be using the color blue, and just so that you can see it a little better, I'm using one of these blue crayons to actually draw with. So we're going to decide what we're drawing, and then we're going to fill it in using our watercolors. Okay, so we have just paper. This is the same watercolor set you should all have received. If you're using other ones, that's fine. You can just use them exactly the same way. You're going to add a little bit of water, or if you guys can see my water cup there, I'll put it up at the top because if it's at the bottom, it's more likely to get spilled. All right, so we're going to start with our foreground. So I'm going to say that, let's see, what do I want to draw on mine? I'm going to draw some trees that come in up here and get really kind of spooky. And I'm drawing it out for you guys. Typically, I don't like to draw things out when I start. I just like to kind of go with the paint. But unless you've painted a little more, that idea might be kind of daunting. You may not want to just start straight with paint. It might scare you a little bit, which is totally fine. So I'm starting here. I have some branches coming off of this tree. Now I could also put something over here, like maybe there's a stump where this tree used to be, and some foliage on the ground here, some sort of leaves, stick stems. Okay, then I'm going to go back to this level, draw another layer of trees. Now, I really like doing these drawings because you get uh, a really nice result by just using the one color. You know, you kind of think maybe it would be super simple looking when you get done, but usually they're a very nice piece. So I'm going to keep going with this idea of drawing trees. Now, if you need help drawing trees, I can post up some examples, but you have other options too, like the one that I've shown you guys. There's the examples of um, hills, castles, anything you might see normally in a landscape. Let's see. So those are all close to being on the same level. Then I'm making some more back here look further away. I'm also making them smaller as they go back. That's another indicator of space. So my lines are getting further back, further higher up on the page as they go further back. But you're also seeing that my items themselves are getting smaller. So the tree trunks are getting skinnier, the branches are getting thinner, and then as I start filling it in with color, it's going to get lighter and lighter. Okay, so I think that's enough. That's definitely foreground, got some middle ground, and then this area back there that's in between all those branches is going to be the background. Okay, so this is a brand new set of watercolors. Hopefully, you guys all have one by now. If not, make sure you're getting a hold of me so that I can help you get one. Okay, so I'm going to start by wetting the colors that I'm going to use. So I know I'm going to mix black, and I'm going to have blue. Because I'm using blue for this one. So this area on your lid is for mixing. So I like to bring out some of the blue, bring out some of the black, and go ahead and get my shade in there. Unless you just have a ton of water, it's going to bubble back up like it's doing. That's okay, I'll just keep pulling those out. Now, since it is a new one, you're going to want to try to make sure you don't stick a dirty brush back over in the palette. I have already, you can kind of see I got a little bit of black in my blue and blue in my black, but it'll be okay because I'm still going to be using it. I'll wash that out as I go. So I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to start on the middle section. Now, this is probably the opposite of what some art teachers are going to tell you. Most of the time when you're starting with watercolors, you're going to want to start with the lightest color you're going to be painting, and then build from there, make it darker as you go up. But I just started with the middle here because I don't want to lay on that darkest color yet. But I do want to get some of these kind of filled out so that I can finish drawing in their branches up here. Okay. And you can see as you're working with watercolor, the more water that goes into your paint, the lighter it's going to be. So if I take it straight from the palette and put it over here, it's going to be nice and dark. If I dip into the water and add water to that same area, it is going to get lighter, especially if I add a bunch of water and then spread the color out in that range like I just did. So also depends on what paper you're using. If you're still using the copy paper, I did have some more drawing based paper. It's a little thicker. It'll do a little bit different things on different paper too. But for the most part, it doesn't matter. The more water you use, the lighter it's going to get. Now, you just don't want to get so much water on your paper that it starts to beat up or get the little, trying to think of the word, um, the little fuzzies on there. It's not as proper of a term. I'll think piling. It gets piling started on there when it gets the little fuzzy um, ball shape things because you scrubbed the paper so hard it's starting to tear the papers. What those are, it's just tiny pieces of the paper building up. Okay, so this is sort of my middle tone. I'm going to keep going. You'll eventually see the final result of all this. I will clean it up as I go, but I'm going to, this is kind of a nice middle blue. Now I'm going to go in and do the lighter stuff, and I'm using the same brush that your art sets have. That way you're seeing exactly how yours can be used also. So I'm going to start with the really light, meaning that I'm taking this blue and I'm dipping it in the water and not using as much pigment as I did a minute ago. So I'm going to have to spread that around. I had a whole bunch of water. It's going to make a whole lot of that light blue. Spread it around in here in between my tree branches. Now this is why most people start with the lightest color and then build up, because what happens is when you go back and paint over areas like this, it's going to make it bleed because you got that dark color wet. But that's fine, you can fix it. That's why we're doing kind of a natural scene. Natural scenes give you more forgiveness on those areas because you can go back and fix them and make the branch a little thicker, thinner, give it some texture, and add in stuff. Just like Bob Ross, you can just fix that happy little mistake. Alright, so going back to filling in my light color, fill it in. This is a project you may not be able to finish all in one setting because watercolor requires some drying time. Sometimes your paper gets too wet and you'll have to just set it aside and let it dry and come back. Okay, it's way better than having to totally restart if you just wait a little bit and finish it at a different time than trying to rush it and getting something that you're not happy with because you were impatient. That's just kind of part of watercolor. Now, if you were using acrylic paint, it would be the same thing, except for it will dry a little faster. Acrylic paint is like the craft paint you can purchase at Walmart or um, wherever you guys kind of shop. If they have that craft paint that comes in little tubes, that's more than likely going to be an acrylic paint. That paint will dry pretty fast. And watercolor is easy to dry if you have a blow dryer or something like that. You just have to be careful. If you hold it sideways and blow this way, it will puddle everything out that way too. The water will move across the page. All right, so I have my lights, most of my middles. I went back and darkened them a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to do the very darkest. I told you guys we were going to use black too, so I'm going to start with black and just pull a little bit of the blue over there. In the camera, it's not showing up as navy, but maybe if I swirl it, you can see that it's not totally black there. When it pulls back up, it definitely looks darker than what it's going to show up as. Okay, so then I'm going to start painting on here. Remember, it is water, so it's not going to be as dark as that little puddle. Now, if you want it to be darker, you're just going to have to keep pulling straight from the palette over. And as long as your darkest color still has blue in it, like you can see there, there's still some blue. I had to go back and add it, but it's definitely got a navy blue tinge to it. It will keep it in that monochromatic color scheme that we are looking for. So I'm going to keep filling in this. This tiny brush does make it a little harder to fill in big spaces, but my paper is larger than yours too. I'm doing it as large as I can to make the photo clearer. Okay, so let me come in here and add some more to this tree. Now, as you get done for one session, this is your base color. If you want to come back in and add more details, you will have to probably wait until it's a little drier, because as you can see, it will start to bleed into each other. My paper is getting wet, so like this area is pooling into that one. But as you find a spot that's dry, let's come over here where this tree hasn't been touched yet. Okay, I have this stump down here too that's dry. As you're finding spots that are dry, you can come in and do more details with those areas because the color is not seeping into the other areas that are wet on the paper. So if you were wanting to do these really fine little lines that look like grass, or if you were trying to paint people or flowers or whatever is going to be in your landscape scene, I would come back after it's a little drier instead of trying to go in on top of really wet where it's going to bleed. Alright, so I'm going to pause it for a second while I let this dry, and then we'll do a little bit of time lapse and come back and look at it when it's had a little bit more added to it. Okay, so hopping back on here, it's still a little wet from the second coat that I've put on it. I went in and added more details, added more darkness to the darkest layer after it dried a little bit, and add a little darker blue to the middle layer. Okay, and then several more branches. I'm still kind of working on branches coming off of some of these trees. Now that the sky's a little drier and they can kind of show up without bleeding into the other area, I went back in and added some more details to my stump, but right now he's a little bit too wet to add too much more to. So this is your overall project. This is a longer video, so thank you for bearing with me to watch it, but basically I wanted to go through and show you how you can show space using these different techniques. Um, right now we're doing it with color, so you're showing that things closest to you are darker and things further away are lighter, but we also have some other things. Remember, it's the higher on the page, the further back it is, the smaller the object. That means it's also further back because the things closest to you appear larger. And then things overlap that are closer. So this one's behind this one, you can tell because you don't lose any of these branches. I think that's about it. So I can't wait to see your projects. Make sure before you store your watercolors, you wipe this really quickly with a paper towel or a baby wipe, or you let it dry before you close it because otherwise you're going to dump that color into all your other colors. But they're also pretty easy to remove out. You can take them apart and rinse them under the sink if you need to. But good luck. I hope you enjoy this project. They should look pretty awesome when you get done.